It just gets increasingly wild and unbelievable, folks. And we received confirmation. Google. Yes, absolutely. They selected Ripple for the new banking infrastructure. We have the evidence. You're going to want to stay with this video through the conclusion. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. You already know what needs to be done. But we have to kick this right off with the XRP price chart analysis. I keep displaying this to you. There's a specific reason. This is so you can manage your emotions and you comprehend the possibilities of where the price can travel. And when it materializes, you're like, this analyst told us about this scenario. I'm not concerned. You can declare, I'm not afraid, because you shouldn't be worried at all. There's your first indicator arrow. We communicated to you the $1.60 region. We've witnessed it get breached downward. We informed you your next level is $1.30. That's it. We have nothing else to be concerned about. We don't have to discuss anything else at this point. Examine the RSI on the daily time frame. It's extremely oversold conditions, sitting at approximately 27. This is a historic low point for XRP. There's going to be a reversal bounce. The bears are going to exhaust their momentum. When all this turbulence blows over, when it all comes to a conclusion, and I expect some sort of major announcement coming out on this within the next month or so, it's going to be like this volatility never happened. XRP is going to be back at $2 and then $3, and everyone's like, holy situation, it's altcoin season arriving. Strap in, lock in your positions, and we're going to kick it off with this video analysis. Everyone knows this individual. He's everyone's favorite former SEC official, shall we say. That's what we'll characterize him as, correct? The brown paper bag individual himself. You know what that implies, right? They go out, they get a nice expensive steak dinner. They give him a little tap under the table discreetly like this. He reaches under, he retrieves a brown paper bag filled with cash to say something that he never should have articulated publicly. Listen to this clip carefully. You and Jay Clayton, the head of the SEC, have been very adamant that you were not going to modify the definition of securities laws to accommodate this new blockchain technology. One of the points you made in your speech was the concern about the fraud that was present in this space. Are you observing significant fraud? We do certainly see cases where individuals are, look, it's Batman and Robin, isn't it? Batman and Robin, but the evil, corrupt version of Batman and Robin. Comment that below what villain duo they represent, attempting to repackage an investment opportunity as a coin or a token and claiming that somehow because it's labeled that way, it's not an investment security. And in many cases, we have witnessed people doing that where the underlying enterprise is not a solid investment opportunity. It's been misrepresented. So we do observe fraud and we do see it being packaged up this way. This individual is talking about fraud when that's exactly what he perpetrated was fraud. He was instructed from SEC staff members, his own employees, do not go on stage at the Yahoo Finance Summit and say anything definitive about Ethereum. We are not giving it a regulatory free pass. He's like, whatever, I'll do it anyway. I don't care about the instructions. He had to do it for other reasons. That's why he proceeded. Then we get this revelation. I mean, it's about to get absolutely insane and mind-blowing. We're about to examine the official documents where Google selected Ripple to use their technology and to utilize XRP. Do you really think that arrangement changed fundamentally? Of course not. It's just been delayed, folks. We've been correct this whole time with our analysis. I have never been so bullish on a cryptocurrency. I don't care what the price is right now because everything is starting to make complete sense why XRP has been suppressed for so long. It is all starting to come together cohesively. The powers that be, well, the powers that used to be because they're not around anymore, controlling things. They held it down deliberately, on purpose with intention. We see right here in this analysis, if not for certain powerful individuals attempting to snuff out its competition to protect Bitcoin's dominance, OpenCoin, the predecessor company to Ripple, would have already been adopted by Google more than a decade ago. Here's the email evidence. This person's spot on with their analysis. This email that you're looking at right now, it tells you that Google selected Ripple, that Google chose XRP, that they planned on using it and adopting it into their infrastructure. And then your powers that be up above who ran questionable operations were holding it back. Because who do you think was being invited to these exclusive gatherings? The top banking elites, the top powers that be from around the world. And the emails confirm everything that happened. They got together and they stated, look, Google is a technological superpower. If they choose Ripple or OpenCoin at the time and they're going to use XRP, this thing is going to go ballistic in value. We have all our capital invested in Bitcoin. We will witness a massive rotation of capital. We will take massive losses on our Bitcoin holdings because everyone's going to follow what Google is doing. And Google's pretty much partnered with everyone globally, correct? And they're going to observe that Google can use this technology to move money around the world, to move money in different currencies efficiently. And then Amazon would get on board. You'll have your Alipay on board. You'll have your biggest banks and governments on board. So what does that do to Bitcoin's market position? It defeats its whole purpose as the dominant cryptocurrency. It's going to make it experience a run, what we call a run on Bitcoin. That's what would have happened to the market dynamics. And this analysis was put out in the email communications. The redacted sender is informing relevant parties that Google is looking to link their digital wallets to OpenCoin, that is now Ripple, to roll out payment systems in Africa. Here's your email evidence. We saw that one. Here's the other one. It states Africa's ballooning tech presence. The internet in Africa will be primarily a mobile one. That is coming from Eric Schmidt, who was the executive chairman of Google at the time. It states, Google has outlined 2 plans for building technical infrastructure in Kenya and other parts of Africa with the potential use of Wi-Fi blimps or weather balloons to provide internet service. I want to take this a step further because now you want to know how this is going to play into Elon Musk and Starlink, correct? You have Google, you have them worried about weather blimps and putting out weather balloons to give them better internet service. What do we have now in the present day? Elon Musk and Starlink, which can give you satellite internet coverage anywhere throughout the world. Folks, this gets so much bigger and more interconnected. It is mind-boggling. It's absolutely insane. They start discussing well-suited to provide low-cost connectivity to rural communities with poor telecommunications infrastructure, and for independent coverage of wireless broadband in densely populated urban areas. It states Google is also making strategic moves in the digital payment arena. They recently introduced, you probably remember this from a decade ago when Google Wallet came out and payment capabilities in emails, and they announced an investment from Google Ventures in OpenCoin, the company behind Ripple, a new digital ledger technology with similarities to Bitcoin. This was it. Ripple was selected over a decade ago, so everything Ripple has been communicating this whole time, it has been dead accurate. It is spot on, folks. It is completely accurate. When Ripple tells you, and they've stated it 4 or 5, maybe even half a dozen times at this point, that everything they do relies around XRP as the core asset, they are not lying to you. And they know Google is still on board with the vision. Everything was just delayed by external forces. But I'm taking it a step further because I believe Elon Musk and Starlink is going to provide a massive role in all this, with Google as well in the future. And then this legal analysis drops. So the timeline went from one SEC chair to another official, back down to another SEC chair who appeared back in 2018. It states that this person was integrating with certain political figures and the bank-loving and crypto-hating wing of certain political parties. And just weeks before a major speech on June 13, 2018, and just before or after the start of the SEC investigations into Ripple and sales of XRP. Now remember, during the lawsuit, what Ripple came out and they communicated to you, they let you know they were meeting with the SEC from 2014 all the way until this lawsuit was filed. They were caught off guard by the legal action. They didn't know about these email communications and the coordinated holdback and the rollback of plans. They were probably scratching their heads being like, why haven't we rolled this out with Google yet as planned? This was all coordinated against them. They went after Ripple because certain parties were afraid of taking down what some call a Bitcoin-centric system that exists. Now, I'm not saying Bitcoin's going away because of this revelation. Bitcoin is still going to survive and thrive. They built it up long enough. There's enough capital invested into it that XRP and Bitcoin are going to be 2 completely separate assets with different purposes. You can see now that they have 2 completely different use cases and market positions. Store of value versus cross-currency conversion, cross-border money movement and payments. But Ripple told you when they were meeting with the SEC from 2014 all the way up to the lawsuit filing, Every week or every couple of weeks they were going into the office, and the SEC said there was nothing wrong with their operations until it changed overnight because of the powers that be from up above making decisions. And then we get these communications where one individual went after Chris Larsen because he was upset that Larsen was donating money to go after certain initiatives. And he sent this email communication, and this is interesting to read. The message asks about being in New York for General Assembly or something related to political figures. Remember, certain political figures were at Ripple's events. Interesting as well, correct? This person was at Swell Conference. It's probably relevant. There were discussions about going to China possibly next year. And then invitations were extended. I don't want to speculate what that means. I don't care what it means specifically. We don't need to talk about those details. What we need to discuss is the coordinated effort here to hold them back from their plans. And then David Schwartz chimes in on this situation. He says, I hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if this is just the tip of a giant iceberg of information. This is communication between powerful individuals with others copied on it, talking about, because this is now, let me set the picture up clearly. Jed left Ripple because he probably knew something was developing, something was going on behind the scenes. He thought, if Google's interested in this technology, let me start something because I can go after other market players because we know it's not just one technology that's going to win the market. But clearly Google likes what Ripple's doing, so we can build something out that can do remittances as Ripple deals with maybe the central banks and governments of the world. So certain parties looked into Stellar now. They saw what Jed was doing with the new project, and they communicated that both Ripple and Jed and Stellar, this is going to be really bad for Bitcoin if this news gets out there publicly or if this adoption comes to life in the market. So what did they do strategically? They said, we need to figure out a way to stop this, to cut this down at the knees so it never takes off, or to at least delay it as long as we possibly could. They've delayed it for almost 12 years at this point. This delay is coming to an end now. The new administration is going to end all this suppression. I'm telling you right now, it all happens under this administration. I've been communicating this for quite some time. Here's one individual back in 2022 attacking Chris Larsen, upset because he used $5 million that he acquired from his Ripple holdings to support certain initiatives. Folks, this is going to get significant. This is going to get revealing. We've been correct this whole time with our analysis. How long does it take to fully play out? Time will tell. Time always tells the truth. But to me, this just strengthens Ripple as a company, especially with all the adoption and partnerships that they have secured. This strengthens XRP as a cryptocurrency as well. The prices we're seeing today at 160, this is nothing compared to where I believe we are headed. Let me add some additional context about why this Google connection matters more than just historical interest. When major technology companies choose infrastructure partners, they don't make those decisions lightly. Google evaluating OpenCoin back in 2013-2014 meant their technical teams assessed the technology, their business development evaluated the partnership potential, and their legal teams reviewed the regulatory landscape. The fact that they move forward with investment discussions and integration plans tells you the technology passed rigorous internal review. Google doesn't invest in or integrate with technologies they view as fundamentally flawed or legally problematic. They have entire teams dedicated to due diligence. So when emails show Google planned to use Ripple for digital wallet integration and African payment rollouts, that's not casual interest. That's serious strategic planning that got disrupted. The Africa angle is particularly interesting because it represents exactly the use case Ripple has been building toward for years. Regions with limited banking infrastructure but high mobile adoption are perfect for blockchain-based payment systems. You bypass the need to build traditional banking infrastructure and go straight to digital rails. This is why companies like M-Pesa succeeded in Kenya with mobile money before blockchain existed. Now imagine that same market with modern blockchain technology providing even lower costs and faster settlement. That's the opportunity Google saw over a decade ago. And it's the same opportunity that still exists today, arguably even larger now with more mobile penetration. The Starlink connection I mentioned isn't just speculation. If you're trying to provide financial services in regions with poor internet infrastructure, satellite internet solves a critical bottleneck. Starlink is already operating in multiple African countries. If you combine satellite internet coverage with blockchain-based payment rails, You've suddenly enabled financial services in areas that traditional banking could never profitably serve. This is the kind of infrastructure convergence that creates massive opportunities, different technologies solving different pieces of the same problem. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the allegations about coordination to suppress Ripple. Whether you believe in active conspiracy or just recognize aligned interests, the pattern is clear. Bitcoin maximalists had strong incentive to prevent competing narratives. If major tech companies adopted alternative cryptocurrencies for actual utility, it would undermine the Bitcoin-only narrative that many early adopters promoted. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is basic economics. People protect their investments and ideological positions. The emails suggesting coordination between influential figures to slow Ripple's adoption, if authentic, reveal how power operates at elite levels. People with aligned interests communicate, coordinate, and use their influence to shape outcomes. This happens in every industry. The question is whether it crossed legal or ethical lines. That's for courts and regulators to determine. But the broader pattern of Ripple facing unusual regulatory scrutiny, while other projects got clearer paths, is hard to ignore. The Hinman speech giving Ethereum a pass while Ripple faced investigation has always seemed inconsistent. The timeline is particularly suspicious. Ripple was meeting regularly with SEC staff for years, reportedly getting informal guidance that XRP wasn't necessarily a security. Then suddenly in 2020, lawsuit. What changed? Not the technology, not the business model. What changed was the political and economic environment. New SEC leadership, new priorities, new pressures. Whether those pressures came from Bitcoin interests, traditional finance wanting to slow crypto adoption, or other sources, the effect was the same. Years of uncertainty for Ripple, while competitors operated with more clarity. David Schwartz's comment about this being the tip of the iceberg is significant because he's generally measured in his public statements. He's not prone to conspiracy theories or wild speculation. When he suggests there's more to discover, it's worth paying attention. He's been in this industry since the beginning. He's seen the behind-the-scenes dynamics. He knows where bodies are buried, so to speak. If he thinks these revelations are just the beginning, there's probably substance to that intuition. The Jed McCaleb situation adds another layer. When he left Ripple to start Stellar, conventional wisdom said it was about technical disagreements or business direction. But what if he saw the writing on the wall? What if he understood that powerful interests were going to make Ripple's path difficult and decided to create an alternative that might face less resistance by positioning differently? Stellar focusing on nonprofit and humanitarian use cases rather than working with major banks might have been strategic positioning to avoid the same scrutiny. The fact that both Ripple and Stellar faced concerns from Bitcoin interests makes sense. Both represented narrative threats. Both offered actual utility rather than pure speculation. Both had technology that worked for real-world payments. And both had teams capable of executing on partnerships with major institutions. If you're heavily invested in Bitcoin and promoting it as the only cryptocurrency that matters, watching two well-funded competitors gain traction with real use cases is threatening. Now let's talk about what this means going forward. The political landscape has shifted. The regulatory environment is changing. The SEC under new leadership may take different approaches. And most importantly, the technology has matured. Ripple has spent the lawsuit years building partnerships, expanding services, and preparing for regulatory clarity. They've launched RLUSD stablecoin. They've acquired Medico for institutional custody. They've partnered with central banks on CBDC pilots. They've positioned themselves not just to survive regulatory clarity, but to thrive when it arrives. If Google was interested in 2014, imagine what the value proposition looks like now. The technology is more mature, the regulatory path is clearer, the market is larger, the infrastructure is more built out, and Ripple has proven they can operate and grow even under regulatory uncertainty. That resilience matters. It shows the business model works, the technology delivers, and the team executes. These are exactly the qualities major tech companies look for in infrastructure partners. The price action we're seeing now, the volatility down to 160 and potentially 130, is noise compared to the structural opportunity. If you believe the thesis that Ripple was intentionally suppressed, but the fundamental value proposition remains valid, then current prices represent opportunity, not risk. This is the kind of situation where long-term conviction gets tested. It's easy to be bullish at all-time highs. It's harder when prices are down and uncertainty remains. But that's exactly when the best opportunities emerge. The RSI at 27 on daily time frame is historically oversold. That doesn't guarantee immediate reversal, but it does suggest we're entering territory where risk-reward favors buyers over sellers. When everyone is bearish, when sentiment is negative, when weak hands are capitulating, that's often when smart money accumulates. Not because they have perfect timing, but because they understand value and are willing to be uncomfortable in the short term for long-term gain. So what's the action plan based on this analysis? First, understand that this is about long-term infrastructure adoption, not short-term trading. Second, recognize that regulatory clarity is the key catalyst that unlocks institutional adoption. Third, watch for partnerships and announcements that signal Google or other major tech companies re-engaging with Ripple. Fourth, pay attention to political and regulatory developments that might indicate changing treatment of XRP. And fifth, manage position sizing appropriately so you can hold through volatility without being forced to sell at bad prices. The evidence presented in these emails, if authentic and complete, suggests a coordinated effort to slow Ripple's adoption at a critical moment when major tech adoption could have changed the entire crypto landscape. Whether you view that as conspiracy or just aligned interests protecting their positions, the effect was real. Years of delay for a project that had secured interest from one of the world's most powerful technology companies. That delay is ending. The question is whether you're positioned for what comes next when the delays end and adoption accelerates. That's all from me on this analysis. Make your own decisions based on your own research. Verify these claims independently. Don't take my word or anyone else's word as financial advice. But do pay attention to the patterns, the connections, and the structural changes happening in both crypto regulation and institutional adoption. The next few months could be pivotal. And if you want a systematic approach to navigating this landscape, check out the 100X Club for exclusive analysis and opportunities. It's in the pinned comment. If you got value from this breakdown, smash that like button, subscribe for more analysis, and I'll see you in the next video.